What up, yo? Welcome back to... Oh, wait, hold on. Oh. What up, yo? Welcome back to Forever Backlogged, the show where I review my gaming backlog as I go through it for your viewing pleasure. Times are tough. It's hard keeping the lights on. I may have fallen behind on some bills. Nah, I'm just kidding. I'm doing fine, really. It's just that there's this paranormal dark entity out there to get me, so no big deal. Alan! Yeah, so this week I'm reviewing Alan Wake. I have to say I had some mixed feelings about this game, so let's get right into it. I want to give you my thoughts on it and also hear what your take is, because I have a feeling I might be going a bit against the grain here. Alan Wake was developed by Remedy Entertainment and published by Microsoft initially as an Xbox 360 exclusive back in 2010, with the PC port coming 2 years later. It saw an unusually long development process of over 5 years. Some might describe it as a survival horror game, but I prefer the game's own labeling of psychological action thriller. The game puts you in control of an acclaimed novelist called, you guessed it, Alan Wake. And as Alan, you seek to resolve the mystery of your wife's disappearance while on vacation in the fictional town of Bright Falls. The game pays homage to the classic horror genre with a suspense-driven episodic plot with a lot of supernatural and psychological elements as well. Alan's role as a best-selling writer takes center stage as a lot of the action revolves around events from his next, yet unwritten book seemingly taking shape around him. Adding to that is the fact that all this takes place in a secluded, tourist-trapped mountain town where it's clear that there is a lot being hidden underneath the surface. There is also an overarching theme of darkness which comes into play in more ways than one. The game came out to a very positive reception both from fans and critics alike. It was praised for its pacing and plot, as well as its use of clever mechanics and a chilly atmosphere. Here was an original IP that brought with it some refreshing and innovative elements to a classic genre, along with an ambitious concept. Okay, so Alan Wake builds upon the core experience of the survival horror genre, but adds its own twist in the form of a couple key concepts. Its use of narrative in a very meta way, and like I said, the darkness. Darkness! In the story, Alan is this big-shot thriller novelist known all over, who has since been dealing with a massive writer's block and has struggled to make any progress on his next book. What is not clear at first is that this is not only taking a toll on Alan's career, but on his relationship with his wife Alice also, which is why they decide to take this vacation in Bright Falls where the game takes place. Without revealing too much of the plot, it is when he is faced with his wife's disappearance and an entire week that's gone by which he cannot remember that the narrative begins to twist the mold. You start finding scattered pages of Alan's unfinished book that he himself does not recall ever writing. Not only that, you see the events on those pages start to take place all around you shortly thereafter. The concept of the writer trapped in his own narrative is one of the game's big calling cards, and this is what I meant by it bringing a very meta aspect to the storytelling. The other overall theme is light versus dark, which happens both on a physical and a metaphorical plane. You must seek refuge from the dark at all times, for it is in the dark that you can be attacked by the Taken, whereas it is in the light that you heal and are safe from any aggressors. The Taken, such as they are, come at you with an initial invulnerability that you must first shatter by shining a light source on them before you can actually do any damage. That will most often be your flashlight, but in a lot of areas you are encouraged to make use of other light sources to deal with your foes. This is a clever mechanic that not only adds to the feeling of dread and helplessness, but also adds another resource for you to have to manage. So like I mentioned, not only do you fight the dark on a physical level, by hiding from it and using light as a weapon, but on a supernatural level as you must fight a strange dark entity, and also on a metaphorical level as Wake must deal with all of this along with his own paranoia. As you're sick of hearing by now, I try to avoid spoiling games for myself as much as I can before actually playing them. All I knew about Alan Wake was that it was a very plot-driven thriller-type game, which sounded like something I would totally enjoy. I mean, I'm always hungry for games with good story. Plus I was aware of the praise this game got from so many fans, which kind of made it a bummer when the whole experience fell flat for me. I'll explain. I think I can trace a lot of the things I found frustrating about this game back to its length and progression. It's hard to say what came first, the chicken or the egg, meaning I can't tell if the game was stretched beyond the original concept or if they did not have enough ideas to fill their projected length in the first place. I know some people are thinking the exact opposite. If anything, they would have liked it to be longer, to have more of a game they so enjoyed. To me though, the game felt too long, and the problem is that it eventually ruins most of its good ideas by being too long. The combat sections where you have to shine a light on your enemies long enough to make them vulnerable to your attacks, that's a great idea and a fun one at that. Until you go through it over and over on virtually the same enemies for the entire game. Some just take more light and bullets to kill and that's pretty much it. Then, the game just straight up runs out of ideas and literally starts throwing the kitchen sink at you. Yes, it starts throwing random possessed household items at you.
Oh, they're called poltergeists?
Yeah, whatever, the game throws evil oil drums at you. And you fight them in the exact same way. Shine a light on them for a time and poof! It then moves on to possessed motorized vehicles, which take an ungodly amount of time to light up. And then, you fight some more of the same goons you fought in the beginning because shit, those flying dustbins of doom couldn't keep carrying this game till the end. The creepy quiet sections got to be so stale that my favorite parts ended up being the big open sections where the whole thing is turned on its head and you get to mow down wave after wave of Taken. The same goes for the setting. You make your way through some beautifully designed gloomy wilderness, which I was surprised to see looks still so good to this day. Until you go through so many bushy mountainsides that everything starts to look exactly the same. As do the town sections. It's a creepy, backwards, secluded, horror story town, I get it. All its inhabitants are creeps, nothing is what it seems. I mean, this goes on long enough for the game to lose its ability to be subtle about it. There are also entire sections that feel latched on solely to make the game longer, which make no sense at all in terms of storyline. Which brings us to what was for me the biggest disappointment, the story. Again, Alan Wake brought some good ideas to the table. I felt they had a lot of potential with the writer trapped inside his own narrative angle, but it just ended up as one of those stories that starts with a lot of promise, hinting at some very complex twists and revelations, only to fall squarely on its ass by the end. I fully expect this to be where people will disagree with me the most, and I still dragged myself to the end of the game despite the issues I mentioned before, because I wanted to see the story play out, only to feel completely let down by the conclusion. But hey, you might have liked the game, and to you the journey might have still been worth it, but tell me that ending didn't make you go, wait, that was it? To me the story would have been best served had they played more on the psychological factor, put more of an emphasis on the idea that Alan himself might be the one losing his mind, rather than making it clear there's a supernatural element and a clear villain right from the get-go. And I'll give you an example. About halfway through the game, Alan wakes up in Dr. Hartman's clinic. The doctor then tries to explain to you that your wife has been dead for some time and everything up until that point has been you trying to cope with her death by finding some unseen enemy to try and get her back. This is a delicious possibility for you as the player to consider even for a bit. Except the game only lets you consider it for a split second because it's been very clear that there is a paranormal force as the antagonist from the beginning, as well as having Wake distrust Dr. Hartman since the very start for no real reason other than plot advancement. And that's what I meant before about playing up the psychological aspect a bit more. The end result could have even have been the same, if only they found a way to keep the supernatural aspect of it a bit more ambiguous for longer. Just long enough for you to actually question Alan's sanity as an already troubled soul now trying to cope and make sense of a fatal tragedy. There are a few other things that bother me also. Some sudden difficulty spikes, the tacky narration. I mean, who doesn't like to be told by a narrator that they're overlooking a distant house over the horizon, as they're overlooking a distant house over the horizon? But all in all, what really brought this game down for me was the disappointing plot and how it stretched itself beyond what it could deliver in terms of content. Which makes it kinda strange as I saw a lot of critics praise the game's pace in their reviews. I also saw a lot of people point out the same weak links that I did, except spread out over multiple reviewers that individually still gave the game an overall positive score. So, bearing all that in mind, should you move Alan Wake up or down on your backlog? Personally, I was very let down by this game, but seeing as how it enjoys such an overwhelmingly positive acclaim, I won't try and discourage you from giving it a shot yourself if it looks like a game you'd enjoy. Maybe it won't feel too long for you, Or maybe you'll forgive its other shortcomings because you end up really enjoying the story, who knows? If you like the idea of a story-driven survival horror thriller type thing, maybe still give it a try. However, like I said, this game still looks great for its age, so there's no real reason to rush to it. If anything, I would just try and get you to manage your expectations. The fan response as well as the recommendation from a few different friends of mine made me anticipate something very good or even great, and what it delivered was something meh. By no means did I feel this was a bad game, and probably had it just been shorter and more cohesive, I would be giving you a very different review. I wanted to like this game because I really liked the idea of it. That's it for another episode, guys. I really want to hear from you on this one because I know this game has a big following, so I want to know if any of you out there felt the same as I did, or if otherwise, I want to hear from the fans on how they viewed all those things I pointed out. Be sure to leave a like in the video if you've enjoyed it, and subscribe if you want to catch the future ones. Thanks again for watching, and as always, take care, and I will see you all soon.
That's not Alan. Steve, Steve.